We are now less than 3 weeks away from NFL draft time, and it's time to go in the trenches on this week's mock draft. Plus, can we interest you in a linebacker from the University of Texas? And we play Name That Tune. Could the Cowboys draft a quarterback? It's on the Blitz, coming up now.
Pops out to the right, breaks a tackle. They blitz it. Prescott throws it down the right side for Lamb. Caught it! Wentz gets rid of it over the middle. It's intercepted. Back to throw. Rush. Sacked by Parsons. Heaves it deep down the left side for Gallup. He's got it. Touchdown!
Draft day is fast approaching, and these are busy times behind the scenes here at the Star in Frisco. Welcome to the Blitz. Bill Jones along with Kyle Youmans. Yes, draft prospects are crisscrossing the country, and there's a bunch of them that have landed here in Frisco, Texas the last week or so. Behind the scenes here, that draft room is busy. The draft board is getting set. It's a great time to be out here at the Star.
Yeah, just to where we are in the process. I mean, the combine, check. You're checking the box there. Pro days are over, check. Now you're through 30 visits as of this weekend, check. This is where teams start to stack their boards. You're in the war room, you're going up to the whiteboard, and you're finally having these conversations, these debates over the prospects, and you're moving them up and down the board. So that way, when April 27th rolls around, everything is already taken care of, and you can just play to what comes to you.
And you've virtually taken care of everything as far as free agency is concerned. News from this past week, Cowboys shoring up that defensive line, making sure things are set before a draft day. And the veteran that was acquired at midseason last year, Johnathan Hankins, back for another year.
Yeah, this is an underrated signing for the Cowboys for the most part because of what he does for people around him. I mean, Johnathan Hankins, as a big defensive tackle, never put up the big-time numbers that you would anticipate. Just 13 tackles last year, solo tackles, that is. He put up 3 hurries. He had 9 total stops. But what he did was in 235 total snaps, he helped free up the linebackers. He helped free up the defensive ends. The entire front seven benefited from Johnathan Hankins. You can see it on film that in places where Quinton Bohanna was being pushed backwards, Hankins was either standing his ground or even pushing into the backfield. So for the most part, he coming back is a big-time key to the Dan Quinn defense performing at the level that it did last year.
You know, and then you look at the defensive line depth chart, and as you address needs in the draft, there are some players that are a little longer in the tooth here, and some reaching the end of their first contracts in this league.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of, it's a good mixture of both, because you have the DeMarcus Lawrences of the world that put together another great season, but like you said, he's probably on the back half of his contract and his tenure with the Cowboys. You have Osa Odigizua, Neville Gallimore, who were draft picks a couple years ago, but now they're expected to take that next step. And for Neville Gallimore, this might be his last opportunity to take that next step because he hasn't performed like you thought he would coming out of the draft in 2020. But then you have a draft pick last year, second-round pick Sam Williams, who flashed at different times throughout his rookie season. Can he continue with that production? This defensive depth chart is interesting for a team that had 54 sacks last year, a lot of that coming from youth. Can they continue to mesh the veterans and the youth to play better underneath Dan Quinn?
As you approach the draft, there are needs all across the board, and some of them on the defensive line. All right, we're just getting started on this edition of the Blitz. When we come back, we take a look at a linebacker from the University of Texas.
The Dallas Cowboys Blitz, presented by Blockchain.com, is also brought to you by AT&T, official partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and by Blockchain.com. Make your crypto play today. This segment is brought to you by AT&T.
Country Music's Party of the Year is coming to Ford Center at the Star in Frisco on May 11th. The Academy of Country Music Awards, always bringing you country music's brightest stars together under one roof, and no one does country like Texas. Limited tickets remain. Get yours at SeatGeek.com. As we welcome you back here to the Blitz, and no one does the draft quite like Texas either. A lot of homegrown talent from Texas in this draft, and Haley Sutton takes a look at a prospect who might be on the Cowboys' radar.
Well, there was a Texas Longhorn in the building last week, but it wasn't star running back Bijan Robinson. Instead, it was his teammate on the other side of the line, DeMarvion Overshown. The linebacker turned heads at the Combine earlier this year, clocking a 4.56 40, and he could be an asset to the Dallas Cowboys defense in 2023.
This was the dream. This was the dream.
We hear that so often in football. Players who have dedicated their life to improving their craft so that they can take the next step into professional football. But Texas linebacker DeMarvion Overshown is more than motivated to make that dream his reality.
You see a lot of people where I'm from that all you hear about is he was this and he was that, he could have done that, he could have done that. But me, all the sacrifices my mom made for me, my grandma, my whole family, my backbone, they are the reason why. And I knew I didn't want to be one of those guys that man, I should have been this, I should have been that. So I know the whole art community is counting on me, they rooting for me, and I'm just out here doing what I love to do.
Standing at 6'3", the linebacker finished his campaign at Texas with a career-best 4 sacks, adding 5 pass deflections and 49 solo tackles. He went into this year's Senior Bowl with one mission: to improve his draft stock.
Cover, getting off blocks, pass rushing, all of the above. I just want to show my versatility and show that, you know, whoever drafts me is going to get a guy that's going to come out there, work hard, and going to do what he knows how to do. Coming out here, being able to compete with some of the best players in the NCAA, that's something that I never take for granted because I know it's a million people that will kill for this spot.
And with the Dallas Cowboys in the market for a linebacker or two this offseason, Overshown wants to make sure his versatility leaves a lasting impression on the front office.
I grew up around Cowboy fans. I never had a problem. I never had a favorite team growing up. I just knew if I was blessed to, you know, get to this level, whichever team that drafted me the earliest, and that was going to be my favorite team. You know, it'd be a dream come true to play for the Cowboys. You know, it's the closest team to my city, but it was a dream of mine to make it to the NFL. I love football, and I just want to continue playing as long as I can.
Now, Overshown did show tremendous growth from 2021 to 2022, and he finished his senior campaign at Texas with 5 sacks and 49 solo tackles. And when he's learning behind a guy like Leighton Vander Esch here for the Cowboys, you might want to keep your eye on him for this 2023 NFL Draft.
All right, thanks, Haley. From the quarterback of the Texas Longhorn defense, up next here on the Blitz, we're going to take a look at some quarterback prospects in this draft. And could there be one from the great state of Texas the Cowboys are interested in?
This segment was brought to you by AT&T. This segment is brought to you by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Dallas Cowboys.
Come out to the Star in Frisco for Dallas Cowboys Draft Weekend presented by Miller Lite. The party starts on Thursday, April 27th, 6:30 p.m. Enjoy draft coverage, player appearances, live performances, and more. On Friday, come back for Draft Night Out with live music and games. Then finish strong on Saturday with the Draft Day 5K presented by Baylor Scott & White Health. For more details, visit dallascowboys.com/draft. And welcome back to the Blitz. Bill Jones and Kyle Youmans. We're taking a look at some quarterback prospects in this draft. Of course, there's a lot of talk about those quarterbacks that are going in the first round, but how about some guys the Cowboys might be interested in the mid to late rounds of this draft? And how about we start with one from Hebron High School right down the road in the University of Houston. That would be one Clayton Tune.
Yeah, and there's a lot of smoke around the Clayton Tune fire right now, not only with the Cowboys, but with teams in the mid rounds, because he does present some arm strength and the ability to spread it out. Look at the numbers in the career stats from Clayton Tune. 12,000 yards passing, 104 touchdowns. 40 of those came in his senior year with the Cougars. I really like the moxie that Clayton Tune plays with. He took over for De'Ara King in 2019. He had plenty of experience as the starter with Houston, and he took that program higher and higher to the point that, of course, Houston heading to the Big 12 next season. I really like the way that he runs the football well. He has some mobility. He actually led the Cougars in rushing this past year. And then you talk about the way he can throw it to the sideline. He can throw it over the middle of the field. He has some verticality to his game as well. He struggled at times against outside pressure when they were coming off the edge, but he was able to take off and run a little bit as well. So if he can show an ability to read the pressure, and take off, then I think for the most part, Toon's going to fit in well with the NFL.
And played for Dana Holgorsen at the University of Houston, who coached NFL quarterbacks like Will Greer on this Cowboys roster right now, Brandon Whedon and Geno Smith and Case Keenum as well. All right, how about the guy from Stanford who went on a 2-year Mormon mission, and now he is eligible for the draft?
And you talk about size, that's the best thing about Tanner McGee. He's got an ideal frame, 6'6", 231 pounds, and he's a little bit younger than some of these other quarterback recruits, and you can see so because his career stats aren't going to jump off the page. He was productive. He wasn't overly productive, and he's got a little bit of a lack to his game because he doesn't have that overarching arm ability. He's not going to stretch the field vertically, but what he does is he has some great accuracy to the middle of the field, to the sideline, most of it within 20 yards, but he's able to throw those dots, those little throws. So in a West Coast offense, that's something that somebody might want to utilize, is those underneath throws to allow your wide receivers to run after the catch. McGee brings that in abundance. He didn't have a whole lot of time to throw at Stanford. Actually, one of the least amount of times to throw, just 2.5 seconds according to Pro Football Focus on average through 2022. If he's able to stay upright in the NFL, he may actually show off some of that verticality.
And the third quarterback we want to take a look at, a guy who was very impressive at the Senior Bowl out of Fresno State, Jake Haener.
Yeah, that was the first time I really put a star next to his name. I mentioned moxie with Toon. Double that for Jake Haener. He has that mentality, and he played for the Bulldogs of Fresno State. He has that dog mentality. People love playing for Jake Haener. There's been multiple conversations with some of his teammates, his coaching staff. He's the guy that people rallied around. Now, the one thing that's a knock against his game is the size. From Tanner McGee, who is 6'6", 231. Jake Haener stands at an even 6 foot, 207 pounds, the redshirt senior. You can see even on the highlights that we're showing here, he can throw it over the middle of the field. He has some vertical game, and he's able to throw the deep ball. But really what I liked it the most is his leadership ability. He has that ability to come into the league immediately, even as a rookie, as a quarterback, to not be the starter, but be a guy that people look up to in the locker room.
It'll be very interesting to see if the Cowboys pull the trigger and draft a quarterback in this year's draft. All right, when we come back, we go in the trenches. It's this week's mock draft.
This segment was brought to you by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Dallas Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Blitz. Bill Jones along with Kyle Youmans, and it's time for our weekly segment. It's called the Weekly Mock Draft. And the beauty of this exercise, eventually, if we do enough of these mock drafts, we might actually hit on a player or two that the Cowboys will draft this year. Kyle Youmans doing the honors, and this week the theme of the mock draft, in the trenches.
Yeah, and this one's going to be a lot of fun because I received some critique last week from the fans that watched the Blitz, and they said, well, you didn't take an offensive lineman. Dallas needs an offensive lineman. I completely agree, but last week the board had dried up at offensive line for the most part up until really the third round, fourth round, and by that point, I really don't see the depth at that position as well. If you go offensive line, you're going to have to do so early. So that's what you get for bringing the critique. That's all you get. You get offensive line and defensive line. We're going to do offensive tackle, interior offensive line, edge rusher, and interior defensive line. We're going to start things off in the first round, and good news, lots of skill positions go early on. Zay Flowers is off the board. Jordan Addison is gone. Nolan Smith, who is an edge rusher, but some of these tight ends, Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, all of them not available. So here are the 5 picks that are here. Steve Avila from TCU. I've seen him as high as 26. I've also seen him as low as the 4th round. There are a lot of split decisions on Avila. I think out of these potentials here, you can maybe draft an Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma, a DeJuan Jones out of Ohio State. But again, you're doing basically what you did last year with Tyler Smith. You would move a tackle inside the guard because that's where you need the guard position. give me O'Cyrus Torrence. He's really the steadiest player out of everybody that's on this board right now. And you take a look at the size. I mean, overall, O'Cyrus Torrence is a massive human being. He played during his Florida days at 346 pounds. He's actually trimmed down, which is a good thing for his game, to a massive 330. Still a big prospect, still somebody that can grow into his game, but he is a ready-made starter at the NFL level. He plays his tape under control throughout, and when you put him in a phone booth with a couple guys on either side of him, I really like Torrance's ability to drive in the run game. He might be one of the best run blockers in college football last year, so you take that to the NFL level. Oh, and by the way, in over 700 pass blocking snaps, he didn't allow a single sack for the Gators.
You put a 330-pounder in a phone booth, and there's not much room for anything else in that phone booth. All right, second round, pick number 58. What are you looking at here?
So we got lucky in the first round, lots of skill players off the board, but then you get to the second round, and actually you don't catch a break this time around. It actually dries up a little bit. But here's what you're working with. We already took our interior offensive linemen, but I put a couple other guys here. These are both centers. Tippmann and Weipler are both centers. Chandler Zavala, he's also a guy you could maybe push inside the center if you want, but he might fit better as a guard. Or you could go to the defensive side of the football. And yes, we are going to include defense. Could you add to the list of edge rushers? Because some of those interior guys that you liked with a Keanu Benton, he's inside. He was off the board as well. So I'm going to take this one all the way to Ohio State. Luke Weipler is the best center on my board. I really do like Joe Tippmann out of Wisconsin. Of course, Cowboys have had some success drafting Wisconsin centers in the past. Weipler I like because he brings the size, but he also brings quickness off the line of scrimmage. He doesn't have a whole lot of length, so he has to win at the point of attack, and he gets leverage early in these snaps. And in doing so, he wins a lot of those battles against Georgia, against Michigan, against Michigan State, some of the better teams, even Penn State, that he's gone up against. He's been the starter for the Buckeyes the last 2 years, and when he wins with his quickness, it doesn't affect the lack of length too much, and he was able to block quite nicely for C.J. Stroud throughout the season. I like his growth as a player. I like his ability to maybe fit into this offense as a backup center immediately. And then, of course, Tyler Biadasz, who is going into a contract year. You have to talk about the center position soon, and he's somebody that could take over as soon as this year. He's starter ready, but he probably wouldn't see the starting minutes until next year.
All right, a guard in the first round, a center in the second round. What in the world are you looking for in the third round in the trenches?
So, of course, you could still go back to offensive tackle. That's something that the Cowboys have done in the past. So I put one up there, Tyler Steen out of Alabama. I actually liked this board in the third round because Moro Ojomo from Texas, he's a nasty player. On the outside, Mizzou brings Isaiah McGuire. He's a quick edge rusher as well. And then a 30 visit or a reported 30 visit guy in Byron Young, who does bring some of those same tendencies of Micah Parsons off the edge, except he's more of a true edge rusher than Parsons ever was coming out of Penn State initially. They found that out later. But I think the best player for the Cowboys here is a good run stuffer, somebody that's going to slow down the run and that's going to stuff up the middle of the defensive line. And that's Zach Pickens out of South Carolina. Talked about Luke Weipler and how he does not win with his length. He wins with quickness. Pickens actually wins with both. He actually has some good length, but he's quick in that one technique, three technique spot. He can play a little bit of both ways. He mostly played at the three technique, but he's big enough going to the NFL that you can put him as a true nose tackle, and he's going to bring you some pass rush ability as well as stop the run. So both of those things together in the third round, he would be rotated in as a starter, possibly even in year one. They did bring back Johnathan Hankins, which we talked about earlier in the show, but I think right now this is the best fit, at least based off of the board that we had. Zach Pickens fits that Dan Quinn defense.
All right, so there it is. It's Torrence, it's Weipler, it's Pickens, it's your in the trenches mock draft. And when we come back, well, you know Kyle's email is going to be filled up with, why didn't you take a wide receiver? Why not Quentin Johnston from TCU? We wrap up the Blitz and we come back.
The Dallas Cowboys Blitz, presented by Blockchain.com, was also brought to you by AT&T, official partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and by Blockchain.com. Make your crypto play today.
Final minute or so of the Blitz. Bill Jones with Kyle Youmans. Kyle, what are you reading?
I'm reading the official 2023 Dallas Cowboys Star Magazine draft guide. This feels like a cheesy commercial, but that's okay. You know what? That's the fun thing about this is that you can go online and get this at dallascowboys.com/draft and go find 132 scouting reports, over 30,000 words of draft analysis in there. So lots of reading to be done. It's going to be what my weekend reading is all day
How many
long.
mock drafts do you have in the Star Magazine?
Got one.
Okay.
One mock draft.
This is your official mock draft.
Official mock draft a month at a time. Yeah, it's the official mock draft that's done a month before the actual draft ends up happening. But had a whole lot of fun. Great team put this together. It looks fantastic. Go get your copy today.
All right, for Kyle Youmans, I'm Bill Jones. We appreciate you joining us here for the Blitz, and we will shout at you again next week.